needs to be controlled very much more and thought about much more. So what I'll do is I'll tell the story about inventing the web. It was fun. I think there are a few things to learn from it when you compare with today. There are a lot of things we can take over from those days. I'll talk a little bit about what is important about the web. From the point of view, it's what are the properties of the web as an architecture which need to be preserved. And I suppose that maybe at the end of the talk, there'll be some discussion of things that that you should preserve, that you should keep the same, and also discussion of things that we may need to fix and things we need to improve. So, the story. I thought I could start with being born. I was pretty lucky being born of two mathematician parents. I was born in 1955. That's when computers were really new. They were so excited to be working on the first computer. There was a first computer in the UK that was sold commercially. It had been developed at Ferranti University, and it became then, developed at Manchester University, and became the Ferranti Limited Mark I computer. Mark I computer, my parents were both involved with. It was a Turing machine. Turing, they knew, had proven that in principle all computers are equivalent. So that means if you're a programmer, when you're programming a computer, because they're all equivalent, really it's not your limitation is never in the computer. When you're a programmer, your computer, your limitation is only in your imagination. So whatever they could imagine, and they imagined all kinds of things, some which they did, some which they did. They hoped that they would be in the 50s. They hoped that they would be translating from English to Russian and back. It turned out more difficult. So those were exciting times, and I suppose I grew up doing math at school. I went to Oxford and did physics, and at Oxford I used the university computer for things I wasn't supposed to use it for, so I got thrown off, and so there was extra impetus for me to design my own computer. I was really lucky. I think my generation, my particular year, in a way, happened to be of an age, so when I was this high, I could build electric things with magnets. I could make electromagnets with wire. And then when I was this high, I realized that you could buy transistors, these things with 3 wires on poking out the bottom, with which you could build, if you had enough of them, you could build a computer. But I built fairly small things. But then, and I started building more and more complicated transistor circuits. And then when I was this high, I could go into London to the second-hand shops, electronic shops, and you could buy not just transistors, but then you could buy things with 16 little legs coming out of the bottom, which combined several transistors. These integrated circuits came out just as I was a teenager, so I could imagine building things. My mum and dad were building computers at the office. They were big things then, but in principle, I knew by the time I was an undergraduate, I knew that I could put these things together. I knew in principle how I could combine all these integrated circuits to build a computer, but it would be a big computer. And then, just as I was at Oxford, out came a big integrated circuit with 40 pins on it, and in that was the entire processor. That was the microprocessor. That was the first microprocessor I saw, the 6800 microprocessor. And I rode that revolution. The microprocessor revolution changed electronics, because you could take a huge amount of electronics, rip all the electronics out, and put just a computer in the middle, connect the computer to all the inputs and outputs. So I learned to do that. And that was how I made my living. That was how I had a lot of fun in England, on the south coast of England, and then went to, certain point, CERN, this fantastic physics lab, if you get a chance to visit it in Geneva, Switzerland, it's just an amazing place in lots of ways. At that point, they were really behind on some of their systems. I first went there 1980 as a contract programmer. I went back in 1984 as a fellow. It was just to help them build things. I brought experience as one of the few people who understood about how to build things with microprocessors. Took it to CERN. When I arrived at CERN, CERN was a great place full of really interesting people that had come from all over the world, and they had brought with them all kinds of different computer systems, because CERN was not a military dictatorship when it came to which computers you could use. So people came from different universities using completely different computers. Some would have PCs, some would have Macs, some would have HP computers, some would have digital VAX mini computers. Some would like the CDC mainframe, and some would like the IBM mainframe. And so we had also all these, we had these big computers, medium-sized computers, and little computers, and all of them were involved in some way. All of them, you'd find somebody, you need to you're building this huge collaborative project, you're building parts of a physics experiment or parts of the accelerator, and you'd meet people that you had to work with, and they would have all their documentation, all the key facts about how to use their stuff would be on some random computer. And probably at that point, so like, this was 1989. Now, I was working at CERN, and in fact, 20 years beforehand, the internet had been invented by Vince Cerf. So the internet, okay, and the web are very different. The internet is all those cables that connect all the computers. The web is websites. 1989, the internet connections had spread across mainly America, but in CERN, it was just becoming politically allowed, appropriate to use these American protocols. So the internet was there, and so in fact, the situation was I would want to get at some document. It would be on your computer. Your computer, I have to log into it using some weird program. It would take me ages to understand the document. If I could download the document, it would be in a format I could use, but actually, your computer was connected to the internet, actually. And you used it, and so the internet had become connected. So I could, in fact, imagine that this documentation system that you had on your weird computer was part of one great big unified global documentation system. So that was what I imagined. I did it just because I needed it. I never managed to get official sanction for it. So famously, I put around a memo. My boss, Mike Sendell, was a great guy. He could understand, I think, what the possibilities of the project would be. But when I gave him a memo, he didn't really have any way in the CERN environment to allow me to create a global hypertext project. There was physics experiments. There were lots of committees I could do to do physics experiments. So he said, I will let you do it on the side. So I will let you do it. We'll get a next machine. We will get, because you wanted to get a next machine, you can kick the tires to the next machine and build it on that. And so so that's how I did it. I did it the next machine, which Steve Jobs had made when he left Apple, was a wonderful development environment. So it only took me a couple of months to to write a web browser, what you now think of as a web browser. It was actually an editor too, because I wanted the whole world to be read-write. I wanted everybody to be able to write onto the web as well as read onto it. And Mike unfortunately got cancer just at that point. And when I didn't find it until they went through his things, his wife went through his things when he died, and she found the piece of paper, that memo, and in his writing on the corner, he had written, vague but exciting, in pencil. So I'm just glad that he thought it was vague but exciting. If he thought it was exciting but vague, maybe we wouldn't have a web. So, but he let me do it in my spare time, and so lesson for that, let people do things in their spare time. Or if you have students working for you and they have a project they're supposed to do, but they get really they start getting really into some other side project, then try and give them that 20% time and then maybe if it looks really interesting, think about let them scale it up to 100% time. So designing it was easy, persuading people to use it was really hard, but it was a question first of getting people at CERN to use it by putting the CERN phone book on it, then getting people in high energy physics to use it, and then it would jump when we had enough critical mass in high energy physics. There would be enough for somebody outside the high energy physics world to see it, and then the web would jump across, and then bit by bit we noticed that there was an article about it in The Economist. I think it was the first newspaper to write about it, believe it or not, because they came to CERN looking at interesting projects. And then bit by bit, and eventually, bit by bit, more and more people learned about it, and it spread. As it spread, initially, I just wrote the specs for it, okay? I had to define URLs, this http:// I had to define the format. I'm sorry about the slashes, I'm sorry you have to type that, maybe I could have missed them out, but if I designed it a second time, it wouldn't have a //. But there you go, it's a slide. But the URL is the most important thing, in fact, just the fact that everything on the web must have a name, and the name is going to be URL. You must put things, give them those names, and also you must run a server so that somebody goes and looks up that name on the internet, that you have a server which then sends the document back. It's really simple. The web is one of the simplest things on the internet, and still is. The protocol, the language computers talk to each other across the internet, HTTP, the hypertext transfer protocol, I had to design, that was fairly simple. And then the markup, HTML is the markup language. That was also initially very simple. Initially, the number of tags in HTML that you had if you were coding up a document were really small. You could put headings, you could put paragraphs, you could put anchors. The important thing, anchors were allowed you to link to other documents. So the web was really simple, and it still should be simple. HTTP has become more complicated because it has to be, because you want it to be efficient to cache things. HTTP now has gone to HTTP2, which is very much more sophisticated. HTML has become very, very complicated. It's turned from being a language for static documents to a language where every web page runs, is in fact programmable. You could write a JavaScript program that runs in the page. And because every web page is programmable, in a way, if you're creating a website, then when you look at any web page, you have the same challenge that my parents had when they were building the first computer. The web page is a computer. What you do with it is limited only by imagination. So that challenge with the programmable web has been the thing that so many people have risen to, producing all kinds of things like social networks and so on across the web. So, in a way, I should say that there are a couple of really important parts for social transitions. One was when I left CERN, the people around me, the people in the computer industry, were really anxious to have some sort of a group, some sort of a club they could join where they could all agree on the standards. They realized the thing worked because all the computers across the world used the same HTML. They used the same HTTP protocol to communicate. So that when any computer, any browser, you click on the link, go to any server in the world, they must speak the same language. And so I formed the Worldwide Web Consortium for basically the industry members, but also academic members, crazy people working in their garages joined because they wanted to work on standards, not just for HTML or for the style sheet language, CSS, for graphics language, SVG, for JavaScript, and all the APIs. Still, the work that we started in 1994 when I moved to MIT, the Web Consortium started, then we were already too late because the Microsoft and Netscape were battling. There was a thing called the browser wars. Microsoft and Netscape were two companies battling to be the browser. And for a while everybody worried because Netscape was the dominant browser. And then they worried because Microsoft was the dominant browser and Microsoft was the dominant operating system. And then they worried that Google was the dominant search engine, and now they worry that Facebook is the dominant social network. So there's been a series of perceived and real threats to the web from monopoly. Talk a little bit about that later. But the consortium's work was hectic and then and is more. And has continued to be so. And if you've working on any in a WTC working group, congratulations, thank you for the work, and you'll know that there's a huge amount of work being done, huge amount of APIs, for example, being standardized to bring the web, and a huge amount of tests being produced and so on. So the Web Consortium was important later on, significantly later on, when all the technical people were looking around, and we realized 10% of the world use the web. What? Yeah, no, really, 10% of the world use the web. Yeah, well, 10%, you mean like? So that means that when we make the web more powerful, when